yes, it does have a very big meaning for me. I've had 4 terrible years, as most of people know.
Cliff Richard isn't just a singer, he's a legend. For decades, his songs filled the airwaves and made him one of Britain's brightest stars. He sold millions of records, performed for royalty, and captured the hearts of fans across the world. Off stage, his personal life often made headlines, but he carried himself with grace through it all. Now at 84, life looks very different for Cliff. Recently, he shocked fans by opening up about death and what the future holds. Join us as we take a closer look at his journey and the heartbreaking truth about his life today. Early life in India and move to Britain. Cliff Richard was not always Cliff Richard. He was born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940 in Lucknow, which at the time was part of British India. His father, Roger Oscar Webb, worked as a manager for a catering contractor that provided services to the Indian Railways. His mother, Dorothy Marie Daisley, kept the family together while they lived in India. The family had roots in England, though not entirely. Cliff's background was mainly English, but one of his great-grandmothers was half Welsh and half Spanish. That detail came from her mother, Emmeline Joseph Ribeiro, who was Spanish. The Webbs lived in a modest home in Maqbara, close to Hazrat Ganj, the main shopping district in Lucknow. Dorothy's mother even worked as a dormitory matron at the La Martiniere Girls' School. Cliff was not an only child. He had 3 sisters, Joan, Jackie, and Donna. Donna later passed away in 2016. After the violence of Direct Action Day in India, the family decided it was no longer safe to remain there. By 1948, just after Indian independence, they boarded the SS Ranchi and sailed for 3 weeks until they arrived in Tilbury, Essex. The family had to leave behind a comfortable life in India. There, they lived in a company-provided flat near Calcutta. But in England, their life was very different. They first stayed in a semi-detached house in Carshalton, North Surrey. Cliff went to Stanley Park Juniors, a local primary school. Things changed again when his father got a job in the credit control office of Thorn Electrical Industries in Enfield. They then moved in with relatives in Waltham Cross, Hertfordshire. He attended Kings Road Junior Mixed Infant School until the family was given a 3-bedroom council house in Cheshunt in 1950. It was at 12 Hargreaves Close where they finally found stability. From there, Cliff went to Cheshunt Secondary Modern School, where he studied from 1952 until 1957. He stayed on longer than many other students because he was in the top stream of classes. He managed to pass his GCE ordinary level exam in English literature. After finishing school, he found work as a filing clerk for Atlas Lamps. Years later, the town of Cheshunt honored him by naming a development of retirement flats, Cliff Richard Court. But before fame, young Harry was beginning to discover music. He was especially drawn to skiffle, a style that was popular at the time. When he was 16, his father bought him a guitar. That guitar changed everything. In 1957, he formed his first group, the Quintones, a school vocal harmony band. He also sang with the Dick Teague Skiffle Group. Without knowing it, he was already stepping onto the path that would make him one of Britain's biggest stars. The next step would take him from Harry Webb to Cliff Richard, the name the whole world would come to know. A name change and first steps into fame. Harry Webb's life turned a corner when he became the lead singer of a rock and roll group called the Drifters. This was not the same as the American group with the same name. A businessman from the 1950s, Harry Greatorex, suggested that the young singer should change his name. He wanted something that sounded stronger, something with character. Cliff was chosen because it sounded like Cliff Face, which linked to the idea of rock. The surname Richard came from Ian Samwell, the writer of Move It. He suggested it as a tribute to Harry's idol, Little Richard. That is how Harry Webb became Cliff Richard. Before their big stage debut in 1958 at the Regal Ballroom in Ripley, Derbyshire, the group officially took the name Cliff Richard and the Drifters. The lineup included Cliff as the lead, Ian Samwell on guitar, Terry Smart on drums, and Norman Mitham on guitar. None of the others would go on to be part of the later group, the Shadows, though Samwell kept writing songs for Cliff in the future. Their first big chance came when agent George Ganju saw them perform in London. He recommended them to record producer Norrie Paramore. For Cliff's very first recording session, Paramore gave him the song Schoolboy Crush, which had been recorded earlier by American singer Bobby Helms. But Cliff also got to record a second song as the B-side. This was Move It, written by Samwell while riding on a number 715 Green Line bus to Cliff's house for practice. For that session musicians were used. Ernie Shears played lead guitar and Frank Clark played bass. Something unusual happened. At first, Schoolboy Crush was supposed to be the A-side, with Move It as the B-side. But the B-side began getting more attention. There are two versions of the story. One is that Paramore's young daughter loved Move It. Another is that TV producer Jack Good insisted that only Move It should be performed on his show, Oh Boy. Cliff remembered the moment, saying, "It's wonderful to be going on TV for the first time, but I feel so nervous that I don't know what to do. I shaved my sideburns off last night. Jack Good said it would make me look more original." That moment paid off. Move It shot up the charts and reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. John Lennon himself later said it was the very first authentic rock and roll song to come out of Britain. Cliff Richard was no longer just a teenager with a guitar. He was now a rising star. Rise to stardom with the Shadows. At the beginning of his career, Cliff Richard was promoted as Britain's answer to Elvis Presley. Like Elvis, he had the hairstyle, the clothes, and the stage presence. He rarely smiled during performances and carried himself with attitude. In 1958 and 1959, he released songs like High Class Baby, Livin' Lovin' Doll, and Mean Streak. These records carried the fast, fiery spirit of rock and roll. But it was with Living Doll that everything changed. This was Cliff's 5th record, and it became his first #1 hit. By this time, his band had gone through some changes. Jet Harris, Tony Meehan, Hank Marvin, and Bruce Welch joined the lineup. Because of legal issues with the American Drifters, the band changed its name to The Shadows. Living Doll even appeared in Cliff's first movie, Serious Charge, though arranged as more of a country tune than rock and roll. The Shadows were not like ordinary backing groups. They became stars in their own right, signing their own recording contract with EMI in 1959. They released hits of their own and sometimes even replaced Cliff at the top of the charts. Still, they worked closely with him and wrote many of his most famous songs. With the Shadows by his side, Cliff Richard took over British music. His single Move It may have started the fire, but with more hits and growing popularity, he became the dominant face of rock and roll in Britain before the Beatles took over. For a while, Cliff Richard stood at the very center of British music. But music was not the only place where he would shine. Beyond music and lasting legacy, Cliff Richard was not just a singer. In the early 1960s, he began acting in films such as Espresso Bongo, The Young Ones, Summer Holiday, and Wonderful Life. He even had his own BBC television show. As the years passed, he leaned more into his Christian faith. His music softened, moving away from pure rock and roll. He also recorded contemporary Christian music at times. But even with those changes, he never faded from the spotlight. His career stretched across more than 6 decades, something few artists can claim. His list of achievements is long. He has more than 130 singles, albums, and EPs that reached the UK Top 20, which is more than any other artist. He has had 67 UK Top 10 singles, second only to Elvis Presley. He holds the unique record, tied with Presley, of being the only act to make the UK singles charts in the first 6 decades of its history, from the 1950s to the 2000s. He also had 14 UK #1 singles, including 4 Christmas #1s. 2 of those, Mistletoe and Wine and Savior's Day, were as a solo artist. By the end of the 1990s, he had sold more than 250 million records worldwide. That made him one of the best-selling artists in history. While he never reached the same level of success in the United States, he still had hits there like Devil Woman and We Don't Talk Anymore. In Canada, some of his records went gold and platinum. He was also loved in places like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Northern Europe, and Asia. Even when he wasn't touring, Cliff divided his time between homes in Barbados and Portugal. In 2019, he moved to New York. His journey had taken him from a young boy in India to one of the most famous names in British music. But behind the fame and success, his story was filled with moments of change, resilience, and an unshakable will to keep performing. The pain of losing his father and mother. Cliff Richard's career was just beginning to rise when tragedy struck his family. At only 20 years old, he lost his father, Roger Webb, in 1961. Roger was just 56 when he died from complications with thrombosis. It was a moment that deeply marked Cliff's life. He later opened up about it during his appearance on Piers Morgan Life Stories. The singer, now looking back over decades of fame, still could not hide the emotion he felt about losing his father so young. Piers asked him if he had been able to say everything he wanted before his dad passed away. Cliff admitted softly, "It wasn't easy for any of us, really, but he was a naughty person, really. He did smoke a lot. But no, I didn't." His voice cracked as he continued, showing just how raw the memory still was. "That's why I feel sometimes that my anger, if I've got any, comes out when I think he missed the best things in my life. He never saw the knighthood, everything that Dad, he was the one that was right behind me. And when he became part of the management group, he's the one that kept me on the tracks and continued to remind me, this is what you're going to do." So for me, it was a horrible, horrible loss. For Cliff, his father was more than just a parent. He was his guide and his biggest supporter at the start of his career. The pain came from knowing Roger never lived long enough to see his son's true success. He died only 2 years after Cliff had his first big hit with Move It. He never witnessed the long career, the global fame, or even the moment Cliff became Sir Cliff Richard. It was a loss that shaped the star in ways words could barely describe. Cliff's mother, Dorothy, stayed by her children's side for many more years. She lived until 2007, when she passed away at the age of 87. Her later years were difficult as she battled Alzheimer's disease for almost a decade. Cliff once spoke about the struggles he and his sisters faced during that period, saying how hard it was to see their mother slowly slip away. Dorothy had been a strong figure in the family. She had followed her husband from India to Britain in 1948, raising her children in a new country with new challenges. Her passing brought another deep loss for Cliff and his siblings, closing a long and emotional chapter of his family life. These two losses, first his father in the early years of his fame, and then his mother decades later, were powerful reminders for Cliff that even with success, personal pain never stays far away. But heartbreak for him did not end there. In later years, Cliff had to face more personal grief alongside public challenges. Heartbreak over his sister and years of struggle. The Webb family was close-knit, and Cliff always spoke warmly of his sisters. He had 3, Joan, Jackie, and Donna. In 2016, Donna, the youngest of the siblings, passed away. She had been a special part of Cliff's journey from the very beginning. A source close to the family described what it was like for her as a teenager in the 1950s, when her brother suddenly became one of Britain's biggest stars. She used to transcribe lyrics for him off the latest American singles so he and his early group, the Drifters, could play them. This small but important act showed the support she gave her brother even before the fame truly exploded. When she died, it was another personal blow to Cliff, who had already been going through an incredibly difficult time. Around that same period, Cliff was facing false allegations of abuse. The accusations dragged on for 2 years, during which time his name and reputation were put under enormous pressure. The BBC even filmed and broadcast a police raid on his home, an act that caused him deep humiliation. Although the claims were eventually dropped and he was cleared, the ordeal left scars. His friend and former bandmate, Tony Rivers, described it bluntly. He said Cliff had been through 2 years of hell. For Cliff, it was like the world had turned against him at the same time as his private life was crumbling. The false allegations shook his trust in institutions, and the death of his sister left a painful gap in his family. He spoke out strongly about what he had endured. "My life was effectively turned upside down, and my reputation worldwide was unnecessarily damaged," he said. "I would not want the same to happen to others, whether in the public eye or not. Whilst the police, of course, need to properly investigate allegations made to them, it is clear to me that questions need to be answered by both the police and the BBC about their initial handling of my matter, which has rightly been condemned from so many quarters, including the Home Affairs Select Committee, the broader press, and even the police themselves." Cliff made it clear he would not stay silent. He confirmed that he planned to sue both the BBC and South Yorkshire Police for the distress caused. Reports suggested he was seeking damages of around £1 million. The BBC said they were very sorry for the distress caused, but did not comment further on the lawsuit. For Cliff Richard, the years were marked not just by professional achievements, but also by waves of grief and injustice. Losing his father so early, watching his mother decline with Alzheimer's, and then saying goodbye to his sister Donna, all of it was hard enough. Adding the weight of public scandal made it one of the darkest chapters of his life. Yet even while carrying those personal wounds, his private life drew just as much attention as his music. From letters that ended young romances to relationships splashed across the headlines, Cliff's love life became its own story. Brief romances and a public love story. Cliff Richard made one of the biggest choices of his life at just 21. In October 1961, he wrote a 3-page letter to his first serious girlfriend, Australian dancer Delia Wicks. They had dated for 18 months, but Cliff told her he could not marry. Being a pop singer, I have to give up one priceless thing, the right to any lasting relationship with any special girl, he explained. He said his career came first, especially after his father's death when his mother and sisters depended on him. I have showbiz in my blood now, and I would be lost without it, he added. He urged Delia to find someone who could love her and marry her. Delia never forgot that heartbreak, and after she passed away in 2010, her brother admitted she had been devastated, but still remembered Cliff as a very pleasant man. That choice shaped the rest of his life. Music and duty always stood first, while lasting love slipped away. After Delia, Cliff had short romances. At 22, he dated actress Una Stubbs. Later in the 1960s, he grew close to dancer Jackie Irving, who he called utterly beautiful. And for a time, they were inseparable. She later married Adam Faith. He also wrote about being seduced by Carol Costa, then the estranged wife of Jet Harris. But the 1980s brought the most public relationship of his life, with tennis star Sue Barker. They met in 1982 when she was 25. Cliff flew to Denmark to watch her play, and they were later photographed together at Wimbledon. In 1983, Cliff said, "I'm seeing Sue, the only girl I want to see at the moment, and if marriage comes on the horizon, I shall relish it." Barker said a year later, "I love him, he's great, and I'm sure we love each other." Yet it never led to marriage. Looking back, Cliff admitted, "I seriously contemplated asking her to marry me, but in the end I realized that I didn't love her quite enough to commit the rest of my life to her." Even so, he and Sue stayed friends. Cliff also revealed he was once in love with Olivia Newton-John, but she was engaged to someone else and he lost the chance. Over time, he summed it up simply, "I've had a few false alarms. I've been in love, but marriage is a big commitment and being an artist consumes a great deal of time." Rumors, faith, and the friends who kept him steady. For years, Cliff faced rumors about his private life. When asked if he might be he answered firmly, "It's untrue. People are very unfair with their criticism and their judgments. I've had girlfriends, but people seem to think that if a bloke doesn't sleep around, he must be gay. Marriage is a very special thing to me. I'm certainly not going to do it just to make other people feel satisfied." In 1986, he admitted the rumors were very painful. In 1992, when pressed again, he said, "No, all that counts is what your family and friends know, and they all trust and respect me. What the people outside think, I have no control over." In 1997, he defended single people, saying, "People who are single shouldn't have to be second-class citizens." Through these challenges, friendships kept him strong. In 2001, he met John McKellen, an American former missionary. By 2008, Cliff said, "John now spends most of his time looking after my properties, which means I don't have to." John and I have over time struck up a close friendship. He has also become a companion, which is great because I don't like living alone, even now. Faith also guided him, though it was tested. After the 1999 murder of his friend Jill Dando, he admitted, "I was really angry with God. It shook me rigid that someone as beautiful, talented, and harmless could have been killed." Still, he softened over time, writing in 2008 that the church should affirm commitment in marriage. "If anyone comes to me and says, 'This is my partner, we are committed to each other,' then I don't care what their reality is, I'm not going to judge, I'll leave that to God." Home, second family, and honors. Though he never married, Cliff rarely lived alone. For many years, he shared his home with Bill Latham, who managed his charity work along with Bill's mother. Cliff called them his second family. In 1993, Bill explained his bachelor life. His freedom has meant that he has been able to do much more than if he had a family. If he was to have a relationship, he would give it everything. So because his commitments have been his career, his faith, and more latterly tennis, he has given himself wholeheartedly to those three activities. Family ties stayed strong. When his nephew Philip was born with serious breathing problems in 1988, Cliff helped raise money for the hospital that saved him. His friendships were just as deep. He was close to broadcaster Gloria Hunniford for over 50 years. And when her daughter Karen Keating died in 2004, he performed Miss You Nights at her funeral. He also shared a special friendship with Cilla Black, often seen with her in Barbados, Miami, and Wimbledon. When she died in 2015, he called her incredibly gifted and full of heart, and sang Faithful One at her funeral. He also received honors such as being named Commander of the Order of Prince Henry in Portugal in 2006 for his decades of ties to the country. In 2002, he was voted number 56 in the BBC's 100 Greatest Britons. In 2010, he confirmed he was a non-resident of the UK and had taken Barbados citizenship, though he said, "I will always be British and proud of it." By 2013, when asked if he regretted not having children, he replied that family life would have taken him away from his career. "I've given myself to my family and I wouldn't have it any other way," he said. And then he summed it up, "My freedom allows me to continue my career. Had I been married with children, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now." Facing age and talking about death. At 84, Sir Cliff Richard is still on stage, still singing, and still giving fans the energy they love. But now, he is speaking more openly about the future and what might come next. In a recent interview with a New Zealand radio station, he admitted he might have to give up touring soon. Touring, he said, is very wearing, and every morning he never knows whether your voice is still there. Then, with a mixture of honesty and humor, he added words that shocked his fans. "I might be dead the next year, so I don't even think about it anymore. It's one of those things. As I get older, maybe I'll become less able to perform, so I can't say." These words revealed how deeply he thinks about time. For decades, he was known for youth and energy. But now he doesn't want to be an 84-year-old guy trying to be 18. He explained that he still moves on stage, but it is different now. "I used to move around a heck of a lot," he said. He remembered times when he performed with 4 girl dancers, 4 guy dancers, and he would dance with them all. Today, things are simpler. He has 2 backing singers, both talented men who can dance, act, sing, and even play instruments. Cliff said he would ask them to join him on stage for a few songs like "Do You Want to Dance?" so he could still keep the fun alive without pushing himself too hard. But despite the changes, he was clear about one thing. "I like singing now. I'm as excited now as I was when I came to New Zealand last time. That spark is still there." He knows the audience will see how close he and his band are, describing them as friends and almost a family when we're on tour. It is this closeness that gives him the strength to keep going, even while admitting that time is catching up with him. And yet, behind the smiles and the joy of singing, his words remind everyone that no career, no matter how long, can escape the limits of age. Retirement or just stopping. For many stars, retirement is a big moment. But Cliff Richard has always said retirement is not in his vocabulary. In his own words, "I don't know if I ever want to retire, I don't mind stopping." To him, there is a difference. Retiring means an end, while stopping means he can always come back if he feels ready. He explained it simply. Stopping would mean that I could absolutely change my mind anytime I wanted to, or phone my office and say, "Can you get us a couple of nights at the Royal Albert Hall?" That freedom matters to him. It allows him to take breaks when he needs them, but still return to the stage when the excitement calls him back. This attitude shows how he has always lived his life, never trapped by labels, but always following what feels right at the time. And now in 2025, he is proving that again with his new tour. The Can't Stop Me Now tour will run through November and December, with 18 dates across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. Tickets are already on sale, showing that fans still want to see him no matter what his age. But when asked if this could be his farewell, his answer stayed the same. "I don't know. I might be dead next year, so I don't even think about it anymore." He keeps it real, and he keeps it honest. He accepts that his body and voice may not always let him do what he loves, but for now, he is still out there, still singing, and still sharing the stage with his band like family. That balance between facing reality and holding on to joy is what keeps Cliff Richard moving forward. Do you think Cliff Richard should keep performing as long as he can? Or should he finally take a step back? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.